Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we're going to talk about how you can't believe everything you see on the internet. So ever since I was a kid, there has been a series of images on the internet of like cutaways of Iowa Class battleships that show where the armor is. And many of these images show that the armored deck, which we're sitting on right now, as you can see from this hatch here, you can see how thick the armored deck is. It says that the outer edge of the armored deck is 7 inches thick. The inner edge is 6 inches thick. So if you've been watching this channel for a while, you've heard me often refer to the main armored deck as being 6 inches thick. This is actually 4 3/4 inches of Class B armor plate laminated onto 1 1/4 inches, roughly, of STS steel. And you can see that here where you've got steel of 2 different colors. So the drawings on the internet often allege that it is actually 5 3/4 on the outer edge of the ship. This hatch is the one that is closest to the outboard bulkhead, and just measuring it right here, it is 6 inches thick, like we would expect to see. Now, I tried to trace this back to its source. I checked some of the older battleship references, like Friedman's U.S. Battleships, Guernsey and Doolin, Breyer, all of these. And all of these Western sources list the Iowas as having a 6-inch thick armored deck. However, we were able to find this image of an Iowa Class battleship. Notice the cyrillic. We believe that this is from a Soviet era source on Iowa Class battleships. It's a drawing of an Iowa in World War II configuration, so it could be that old. It might be newer than that. It looks like a 40s or 50s era line drawing like you would see in a Jane's fighting ships of that era. But I am assuming that it goes back to sometime during the Cold War when the Soviets just couldn't get accurate sources on particularly battleships like the Iowa class that were still active. A lot of their stuff was probably still classified to a certain degree. So if you're looking at this source, you can see that there's a couple of issues. One, it's showing the different thickness of the armor around the deck. 2, it shows what appears to be 2 armored belts back around the steering gear back aft. And in reality, where that looks like a rectangular box should actually be a wider trapezoid starting out here and then straightening out and rectangling. So that's wrong. Where it's showing the uptakes, the rectangles in the exact middle of the deck armor, those are depicted wrong. So clearly there are some things that are more or less accurate there. It seems to have most of the armor thicknesses right if you can convert to millimeters. Remember, about 25 millimeters equals 1 inch. So that all seems relatively accurate, but that's also stuff that you can pretty easily find. You know that these ships have 406 millimeter guns, or 16 inches. So I suspect that this original source, which, again, it's just as hard for me here in the West to get that source as it is for them in the East to get the accurate information, is what where this rumor started, and that's probably because they didn't have accurate information. The supposition is that over the center of the ship, you have the superstructure. So that is creating multiple layers of steel that a projectile has to pass through before it gets to the inside of the ship. Whereas on the outer edges, you do not have that superstructure. So the armor is, in theory, a little bit thicker. So it seems like folks that had more access to these Eastern sources continue to perpetuate this, and then it shows up on the internet, so other people start to use those as references as well. So for example, here is a more recent drawing, which I'm betting went off of this original source, and it shows the thicker edge tapering down to 6 inches. And this artist, I've seen a lot of their other work, and it's very good. I'm guessing in this instance, they weren't using a particularly accurate source. So how do we know that this is inaccurate? Well, one, I'm here at the outboard most hatch. I just measured it, 6 inches, it's not 7. If anywhere was going to be 7 inches, it would be around this hatch, which is over a former 40mm magazine. Another source that, again, I don't trust on its own. This is an actual blueprint from when the Iowa Class Battleships were under construction. One of my volunteers was able to pick this up, a scan of microfiche from the National Archives. So this blueprint shows you the deck plates that were used on the Iowa Class battleships. If you look, it is for all 6 of them. So remember, this forward armored bulkhead here is a different thickness on Iowa and New Jersey than it is on Missouri and Wisconsin. So it was postulated, hey, maybe some of the ships had 7 inches tapering to 6, some of them didn't. Well, this blueprint says that all 6 Iowas, BB-61 to BB-66, were using this blueprint for their decks. It says that all the plates are the same, and it even says which steel mills are building the plates for each ship and what delivery dates they have based on when these ships started construction. So New Jersey and Iowa have the same delivery dates, Wisconsin and Missouri have the same delivery dates, Illinois and Kentucky have the same delivery dates. So very cool, and you can see depending on where the ship is being built, they're using different steel mills, whatever one's closer usually, to get this armor plate. So again, a plan is just a plan. Because you have a blueprint that says a thing does not mean that that's actually what was done. However, the fact that we can match those plans to what we're actually seeing here on the ship tells us that, yeah, that's probably an accurate plan. So this is why it's really important for us historians to evaluate our sources. And again, you guys don't necessarily have your own Iowa Class battleship at home. Some of you might, but many of you don't, so you can't just go and, oh, the internet says this, let me go and check that out. So this showed you where you can go for a couple of other sources. Usually if I see one book or depiction that says one thing and then 3 or 4 that say another thing, you go with the 3 or 4, especially when they're legitimate, well-researched things like Friedman's books. I trust pretty well. Those are published by Naval Institute, so they probably know what they're talking about. Friedman probably had access to the best stuff. So there are certain sources that are better than others, and there are ways of evaluating those, even if you don't have an Iowa in your backyard. Can you think of other examples of situations like this where there are differing sources that say different things about these ships in particular? Let me know in the comments section down below, and we'll potentially do videos about those in the future too. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating to support the ship. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and our channel. Thanks for watching.